Hello everyone, this is Zflex and welcome back to another A Producer's Approach video. In this video we're going to be looking at Pegboard Nerd's song Close Encounter. So first off, happy April Fools everyone. No, this isn't an April Fool's joke. This was just more of a spontaneous video that I decided to create when Pickomaniac7 requested to look into the song and do a breakdown analysis. I went back to look up the song because it's been a really long time since I've heard the song, so I kind of forgot about this Pegboard Nerd song. And when I listened to it, I was like, this song sounds really familiar. And then doing some research into the song, this song is actually part of the Lost Tracks EP that the Pegboard Nerds released quite a while ago. So I was wondering why I heard it before, but I'll get a little bit more into that. But no, this isn't an April Fool's video. Crab Rave would have been perfect to, do a Crab Rave, April Fool's joke, kind of like when it came out. But no, this is an April Fool's joke. So anyways, if you haven't watched these videos in the past, I basically break down these videos into 3 separate sections. I have an intro backstory section, breakdown analysis section, and outro section. So as I mentioned previously, I heard the song a long time ago. Whether it be on the Going Quantum podcast or the Monstercat podcast itself, I've heard this song, at least the drop, before. From the intro, I didn't really recognize the song, but I definitely have heard this song somewhere. It's either one of those podcasts, either Going Quantum or the Monstercat podcast. But this song is part of the Lost Tracks EP, which is really interesting because I think Frayne Breeze is the actual title song off that EP, which is actually a really good song. But 20K is on that album or EP, which is really good. That's one of Pegboard Nerds, one of their early releases I like quite a bit. This song, Close Encounter, Rocktronic's on there, which I find quite interesting because that came out on Monstercat 008, and I don't know why it came out again as a lost track. It wasn't really a lost track. It's a little more underrated, but it's not really a lost track per se. So never really understood that one, but I understand why Frayne Breeze is the title track for this EP. But anyways, this is an older song, came out in 2012. It's more of Pegboard Nerds' older dubstep style, and thanks to Pickomaniac for recommending me breaking down the song. It's been a long time since I heard the song. I don't think I actually heard the beginning of the song. I only heard the drop, actually, of the song. So it was kind of interesting to actually listen to the full song and where that drop actually came from. Because I think back in the day, I heard the drop and didn't even know what song it came from. Now I do. I'm like, oh, this is where it came from. So thanks Pickomaniac7 for that. Because otherwise, I don't think I would have ever known where that drop came from. And it came from the song Close Encounter. So anyways, this is the Pegboard Nerd song Close Encounter, and we'll break down the song now. Alright, so that intro really reminds me of how the mashup Monstercat Anniversary videos start. If you guys haven't heard those, it's kind of like a launchpad mashup that this artist, I believe Didrik, I think that's his name, Didrik made for Monstercat. It's kind of like a launchpad cover doing like a really big mashup for 2 anniversary videos, I think. Just the intro of this song reminded me of how the first one started, which is really interesting. Maybe it was that sound effect from this song. I'm not even sure, but it just kind of starts off that way. Pegboard Nerds, I think, started off their songs early in 2012 in this style, kind of with that boom, that kind of sound effect. And then the synth lead sounds really spacey already. It kind of sounds like you're going on a space adventure, or you're at Space Mountain at Disneyland or something. And then there's kind of a sound that goes dun 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 dun, almost like a murmuring, almost like a consistent pacing, almost like a percussion instrument really, but it's just like a synth playing in the background. So it has a really spacey vibe. Based off of this and seeing my buddy Very Berry's trailer video recently for the movie Lightyear. Like, this actually sounds like something that could be part of that movie Lightyear. So it's just kind of a weird coincidence there. So anyways, let's continue. All right, so it's pretty cool. You hear that main lead sound. You hear, I think it's almost like a stab that goes doo 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 doo, and then you kind of have that brassish instrument come in right on the right when the notes start to kind of exaggerate and emphasize the start of the measure there. And it's just kind of like a short, almost like eighth note or something like that, where it just kind of is an accent almost like to the main root note playing, which is really cool. It's a nice touch, and you really do start to get that really spacey vibe from this intro. And it's interesting because the percussion almost comes in this part, but it doesn't sound like a more traditional percussion. It sounds actually more cinematic, like a more cinematic drum in a sense, but it's not really super loud, so it's a little harder to notice. Like, you notice it there, but it's not as punchy as like an EDM kick, which is really interesting for a song in 2012. Not many songs did that kind of cinematic type of or like orchestral EDM kind of inclusion at this time period. Like, that wasn't really a common thing, so it's interesting to hear in this song. So that's really cool. It's kind of nice there, it kind of builds it there. And I don't know if it's here in this section of the song or if it's a little bit later where it actually changes key and pitch a little bit to be like a little bit different with that same lead. But like I remember in this song there is like a key change, and I might notice it later, but if it's in the section I might have missed it now. There is kind of like a key change that kind of abruptly happens, but it's not super abrupt. It flows pretty well. It's just a little more noticeable if you pay attention to it. I just can't remember if it's this beginning section or in the middle section that it changes key, because I do remember there's a key change in this song. But it's really cool how the cinematic kind of orchestral part kind of builds in this intro section for about a minute, which is really different for most dubstep songs in 2012. Most of them had like a more kick snare intro, or they had like a kind of a dated kind of cheesy pad intro, and then kind of have a kick build up and then kind of go into that really kind of big kind of dubsteppy drop. So this is the more cinematic introduction for a 2012 dubstep song, which is totally different, because I mean, if you compare this to like a Skrillex song in 2012, like it sounds totally different even in the introduction. So it's totally different there. I really like the brass instruments and setting up that really space vibe. Really does sound like you're going into like Space Mountain at Disneyland or Disney World or something. Like, really definitely sounds like you're gonna get on the roller coaster there, or you're like in the Twilight Zone or something. So anyways, that's really cool. Then here you hear the brass play, and then you kind of hear an alarm sound or a car alarm sound start. So this is kind of the emphasis that the build up is starting to build up into the drop section. So anyways, let's keep going. All right, so that was the build-up section. Pretty interesting as a kick build-up. Had the sirens playing as the sound effects. There was a white noise sweep, and then there's a sample, but the sample's actually kind of, I don't know, pitched differently, distorted, or just really low in volume. I couldn't really hear what the sample was saying, so I guess it was like a sample kind of tying into the police sound. Maybe it's like a close encounter, so it's like on a car chase or something, and then like that could be like a police siren in the background saying like, hey, please stop, or something along the lines of that, because that's what close encounter and just the vibe and the theme I'm getting from that kind of build up section. So it's pretty interesting. Kind of a short and quick build up into this drop section. And here you kind of have the more staple Pegboard Nerds dubstep sound from at least the 2012 time. So their dubstep sounds a little more of the higher pitched dubstep. It hasn't fully evolved yet, but it's still not bad. It's not the really, really kind of like Animal Instinct, Stephen Hawking, annoying kind of high pitched sound that I'm glad he evolved from. So anyways, let's keep on going. All right, so that's the first part of the drop, which is a more traditional dubstep drop. Sorry, and it's a 1-3, so halftime kind of kick on 1, snare on 3, and then you have the hi-hats playing. Not super frequently, like it sounds a little bit more like on every beat, which is a little so the beat's not as fast. And then you have a conversation between the kind of wubbing sound and the higher pitched end of phrase kind of lead sound, which is, I guess, the kind of melodic tinge to the dubstep drop. And it has a lot of similarities to what Complextro is. It's just dubstep is in a higher BPM. Usually around this time they made it in 140 beats per minute, whereas Complextro was in around 128 beats per minute, which was really similar to house. But the difference being, even though dubstep is a lot faster in terms of tempo, house had a more consistent kick as well as electro. So the Complextro songs, because they're kind of matching the same BPM as house and electro, even though electro is kind of the same thing as Complextro, like they're kind of matching the same tempo as house. So they're a lot faster because the kick is more consistent. It's not in a halftime rhythm, but a lot of dubstep was in a halftime rhythm, so it sounded a lot slower than it actually was. So it's really interesting. You do hear the sounds more in a halftime drop. So you hear like the different wubs and the different sound effects playing. And you kind of see the resemblance to Complextro as well, with the calm response happening the whole time. But I do like the really low sounding growls that the Pegboard Nerds use kind of in this time period, and kind of the more higher pitched sounds that they use. They did bring that back in a lot of their music later on in the future. The song that comes to my mind is the song Weaponized. They have a lot of higher pitched sounds, but they're a lot cleaner and a lot, I guess, bigger, in that song Weaponized than they are here. At least for me, I could tell like a lot of the sounds are made in Massive. Being a person that's used Massive and listened to a lot of music in this time period, most artists were using Massive to create their sound design sound. So it's pretty interesting how their sound has, evolved from Massive into like a Serum synthesizer, where a lot of artists and producers use Serum to create sound design sounds, whether it be melodic or dubstep, trap. Most of any genre, they probably use Serum now, and a little bit of Massive, but you could tell here that a lot of the sound design was Massive. So anyways, halftime rhythm, a lot of nice sound design. The pairing of dubstep's pretty similar to Complextro, but really nice calm response between the two and all the different sounds within these sections. So anyways, let's continue. Cool. So that was the end of the drop. I like the kind of like, I wouldn't say glitching, but like the wubs kind of pair when the kick kind of plays a little more often. It's pretty cool. Kind of gives a nice little, almost like glitching effect. But like the sound matches the same kind of rhythm as the percussion, which is really cool in these sections. So it gives it like a nice variation, almost like a swing feeling to it a little bit, but more variation, which is nice. And then I like the VFX sound kind of outroing into this section, into this break section here. So yeah, really good first drop. Very 2012-esque dubstep. So Nothing much to say there. A lot of the sound design was really cool, and you kind of see the beginning origins of like Pegboard nerds and how their sound has evolved. So, anyways, let's keep going. All right, so that section is really cool. It's the break section. I really like how it started with the kick of the snare. Really, like, it shows you like the dubstep kind of kick and snare, which is a kick, snare, and then there was like a bass sound and like a little, almost like a, I wouldn't say like an art, but like a mini lead in the background that was really low in volume. That was playing for a little bit while I did that kick and snare section, which I actually like that kick and snare section. Like, I kind of like hearing like a nice rhythm like that, just very minimal sounds, kick snare. Like, I actually was kind of grooving and head pumping to that section there, just kind of getting into the groove, and then the kind of lead sound from the intro section comes in, and that's paired pretty nicely actually with that rhythm. I actually kind of like that quite a bit, and all the kind of brass, kind of trumpet stabs, I almost want to call them. Actually, those stab trumpet sounds are kind of the precursors to a lot of trap kind of brass instrumentation, like a lot of trap music, whether it be like kind of the hybrid dubstep trap, or just trap music in general, has a lot of really big brass instruments, like a lot of like trumpets, trombones, and stuff like that, or like really like a kind of harsh sounding brass sounds. This song actually reminds me a little bit of what led to kind of those sounds, just from trap. I would say evolving a little bit from dubstep. They kind of took certain sounds like that into account when making trap music. So it's kind of interesting how hearing these sounds in 2012 is not that different than what you hear in kind of like a trap sound now. More recently, maybe within the last few years or 3 or 4 years, you kind of hear these same kind of brass sounds. So it's pretty interesting. Those sounds pair nicely with that lead, and that pairs nicely with the percussion rhythm. And yeah, overall it's pretty good so far. And then here I just heard like a choir section while the kind of percussion break section was ending, which I never really noticed, and most EDM songs up to this point never really used a choir. I would know because when I made Reaching Halo with Maison, I never heard a house song with a choir, really until the time we made Reaching Halo. And then a little bit after that I started noticing choirs thrown in music a little bit more, but I just never really heard it in a dubstep song. So this is pretty interesting to note. Anyway, so let's keep going. All right, this build-up section is a little bit different. You hear the choir, it plays and then kind of fades out, and then you hear like this VFX, almost sounds like a train, and then the kicks build up, and then there's a little bit of an alarm, but not as like blaring as the first drop, and then you don't hear that sample again leading into the second drop, which is pretty interesting. It's a little bit different than the first drop there. So maybe they didn't want to use the same sample twice for both drops. So that's just kind of interesting. I never really noticed that before. So it's the kick build up, and then you hear the VFX, and then it goes into this drop. So we'll listen to this drop section and outro, and then I should be able to kind of break down what I hear by the end of this song. So enjoy the rest of the song. All right, so that's Pegboard Nerd's song "Close Encounter." Actually, this second drop to the outro is not exactly what I expected it to be. It's a lot more interesting than I've heard in some of the other songs I've broken down, and I think it's a case of it being a song from 2012. So I'll back up a little bit to the second drop. The second drop is structured pretty similarly to the first drop. I like in the middle, there's kind of like a choo choo kind of sound to break up the section, which is cool. And then I heard kind of some VFX in the background. I think towards the later part of the second drop, where it's like almost like a swooshing sound, like whoosh. And I heard kind of like that kind of swooshing sound throughout the drop itself too, like some of those sound effects, which is really interesting. I didn't notice that in the first drop. But what's really cool about these dubstep drops is even though like you might think it's a bunch of wubs, they still follow the same kind of progression, like some type of like either the wubs all playing like a lead sound or they're all following like a bass progression, which is pretty interesting. It just sounds like a bunch of sounds, but in reality, kind of like Complextro, they're all following some type of progression. So it's not just a bunch of random sounds put together. Like I heard like the progression and almost like a lead sound in a sense, I guess you would hear in like a big room house song where you hear the big kick and then you just have a lead sound playing. And that's like the only sound you hear. There's no bass really sound playing in the background. You just hear boom, boom, boom. Like that's all you pretty much hear in a big room song. So this is kind of similar in that aspect. It's just combining different sounds with a very much like a calm response with the whole wubbing and synth sounds and different sound effects and VFX kind of thrown in here and there. So that's really cool. The outro was a little surprising to me that it was just the kick and the snare and the kind of sound that goes like and that's just how it outros, and it's like a really short outro and it ends really quickly. I think it's a test to a song being made in 2012, and this might be why the song's on the Lost Tracks EP, because if Pegboard Nerds, if they weren't really releasing on Monstercat, I don't know if this song could have been the title song for an EP, but it's not a bad addition to the Lost Tracks EP. So I mean, this song is now a Monstercat song, which I can't complain about. It's just interesting with that outro. I would have wished that the Pegboard Nerds included that same lead that they used in the intro kind of in the outro, and maybe extended the outro a little bit longer to progress out a little smoother than it did, because it's just kind of like kick snare for like, I don't know, 15 seconds, and then it just ended. And then it's like a really long kind of almost like a hi-hat or clap or some type of percussionary instrument with a lot of reverb and delay, and just kind of goes on for like, I don't know, maybe like 5 to 8 seconds or something like that, maybe even longer. So it's just like a really long reverb tail, which is kind of interesting there. So overall, this song is not bad by Pegboard Nerds, Close Encounter. I would definitely agree that it shouldn't be the title track. I'm kind of glad Frame Breeze was the title track. But I do like some elements in the song. Like, I do like the really spacey vibe from the intro and the break section. That's really cool. That lead is really nice. I really wish they utilized that lead sound more and kind of the whole kind of cinematic feeling from the intro and break section a little bit more, just for personal taste. But like, I liked how it sounded like something from, you know, like something you'd hear in line waiting at Space Mountain or something you'd hear in like the Twilight Zone, like at the intro of the Twilight Zone or something, just something really spacey, sci-fi like. I like the use of the brass instruments. It reminded me a lot of more modern trap music, and where trap music actually, to me, in my opinion, came from. It kind of stemmed from dubstep in terms of like percussion, rhythm, structure, use of some of the sounds. Like, I think the harder kind of dubstep trap is kind of what started first, and then led into more of the traditional trap you hear today. So it's just interesting how the roots of, I guess, trap music kind of started with dubstep, and you kind of hear that in some of these, in this song for sure, with those brass instrument stabs. The drop section is really cool. I like the use of the wubs and stuff. I really like those low tone wubs, not grubs, wubs. Reminds me a lot of the massive instruments and a lot of the older dubstep, which some of those sounds I like to hear. And also in Complextro too, they use a lot of these similar sounds in Complextro. So I like those sounds. Just kind of the higher pitched leads from the Pegboard Nerds in the song aren't as bad as some of the other ones in this time period, but I'm not a huge fan of like really, really high pitched lead sounds like that are really kind of blaring and aggressive, and it's just not really my forte so much anymore. It used to be when I first started listening to EDM, because that's kind of what was the norm at that time, so that was more of what I was used to. But now I'm like, not so much. The higher pitch sounds, like I could do a little without like the higher pitched lead sounds like that, but overall, really good song. The key change I think was in the beginning, and it's a little harder to notice, but if you do pay attention, you do notice that kind of key change right in the beginning. That's a little unusual too. I wouldn't really recommend that in a song that early. Maybe like halfway through the song then do a key change, but that early in the song is a little bit unusual. I do like the leads in that second break section with the percussion. And overall, it's a good song. I wish they did a little bit more in the outro, and I wish they included the lead sound a little bit more in maybe the main drop. But I understand the main drop to me is the most notable part, because that's the part I heard just kind of in drop sections, and like as I said, the Going Quantum podcast, which I don't even think it really exists anymore. You could look it up, I think, and the Monstercat Monstercat podcast, they would normally just switch to the drop. So yeah, that's the more notable part for me. But I actually like the intro parts and the break section parts a little bit more than the actual drop sections. But that might just be me. So anyways, I hope you guys like this song. This isn't an April Fool's joke, but anyways, happy April Fools. Thank you, Pickle Maniac, for the recommendation. This is not a bad song. I now know where this drop comes from. I didn't realize for the longest time that the drop came from this song, and this song was on the Lost Tracks EP. I thought it was just Rocktronic and Frame Breeze that were on that EP. And 20K. I didn't realize this song was on there too. So I'm glad you liked the song, Pickle Maniac. This song's not too much for me, but I'll listen to it every once in a while. Like, it's pretty interesting. Reminds me a lot of the old dubstep. So anyways, I hope you guys like this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next A Producer's Approach video. All right, everyone, have a good one. Peace.